After years of supporting my family, they left me stranded on the road and stole my money. I spent most of my adult life working my fingers to the bone for my family, thinking that if I put in enough effort and showed enough dedication, they would appreciate me and maybe even love me in return. But I was wrong. So very wrong. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood. My parents weren't the most attentive or caring people in the world, but they were still my parents, and I loved them. I had 3 younger siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. From a very young age, I found myself taking on the role of the caretaker. Whenever our parents were too busy arguing, drinking, or just ignoring us, I would step in to make sure my siblings were fed, clothed, and taken care of as best as I could. As I grew older, I started working odd jobs to bring in some extra money for the family. I did everything from mowing lawns to washing cars to working at fast food joints, all while trying to keep up with my schoolwork. I never complained, though. I just thought it was my duty as the eldest to look out for my family. When I turned 18, I managed to land a decent job at a construction company. The hours were long and the work was grueling, but the pay was good, and I was just happy to have a steady income. I moved out of the family home and into a small apartment, but I still sent a significant portion of my paycheck back home to help my parents and siblings. They always seemed to be struggling financially. No matter how much I sent them, they were always in need of more money. My parents would call me constantly, asking for help with bills, groceries, or any other expense that came up. And like a fool, I always gave in. My siblings were no better. They constantly needed money for school supplies, clothes, or other things that seemed essential at the time. I tried to set boundaries. I tried to explain that I needed to save some money for myself too. But every time I did, I was met with guilt trips and emotional manipulation. They would remind me of all the sacrifices they had made for me, all the things they had done for me, even though I couldn't recall a single instance where they had actually done something for me that wasn't out of their own self-interest. Still, I persisted. I worked harder and harder, taking on extra shifts and side jobs just to make sure my family was taken care of. I rarely had time for myself. I didn't have a social life. I didn't date. I didn't do anything except work and send money home. This went on for years, until one fateful day when everything changed. It was a hot summer day, and I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the construction site. I was exhausted, dirty, and just wanted to go home and collapse into bed. But as I was walking to my car, my phone rang. It was my mom. She sounded frantic. She told me that they were in a dire situation and needed me to come over right away. I didn't hesitate. I drove straight to their house, my heart pounding with worry. When I arrived, I found my family gathered in the living room. They all looked stressed and anxious. My mom started crying as soon as she saw me, and my dad just sat there with a scowl on his face. My siblings were huddled together, whispering among themselves. My mom told me that they were about to lose the house. They hadn't been able to pay the mortgage in months, and the bank was threatening to foreclose. She begged me to help them, to save the family home. I couldn't believe it. I had been sending them money every month, enough to cover the mortgage and then some. Where had all that money gone? I asked them point blank. My dad got defensive, accusing me of not trusting them. My mom just cried harder, and my siblings avoided eye contact. I was tired. So tired of their lies and deceit. But I couldn't just abandon them, not when they were in such a desperate situation. So I agreed to help them. I took out a loan against my own apartment and gave them the money they needed to save the house. I thought that would be the end of it. That they would finally see how much I had sacrificed for them and start treating me with the respect and appreciation I deserved. But I was wrong. Again. A few weeks later, I was driving my siblings to a friend's house when my car broke down on the side of the road. It was in the middle of nowhere, with no cell service and no way to call for help. I tried to fix the car myself, but it was beyond my capabilities. My siblings just sat there, complaining about how long it was taking and how hot it was outside. I snapped. I told them that I had done everything for them, sacrificed my own life and happiness to make sure they were taken care of, and all they could do was complain and demand more from me. They didn't say anything. Just looked at me with blank expressions. Then my brother, the youngest one, suddenly grabbed my wallet out of the glove compartment and bolted out of the car. My sister followed suit, running after him. Before I could react, my other brother shoved me out of the car and took off as well, leaving me there on the side of the road, stunned and betrayed. I managed to get up and chase after them, but they were faster than me. They disappeared into the distance with my wallet and all my money. I was left standing there, in the middle of nowhere, no car, no money, no way to call for help. I had never felt so alone and abandoned in my life. I walked for miles until I finally found a gas station where I could use a phone to call a tow truck and get a ride back to my apartment. When I got home, I found that my family had already been there. They had taken whatever valuables they could find and left the place ransacked. I was devastated. I had spent my entire life working hard for my family, giving them everything I had, and this was how they repaid me. I finally realized that they had never appreciated me or cared about me. They had only ever seen me as a source of money and support, someone to take advantage of and use for their own gain. I cut off all contact with them after that. I stopped sending them money, stopped answering their calls and messages. It was hard at first. I felt guilty and conflicted, but over time, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on my own happiness and well-being for once. I made new friends, started dating, and even found a new job that I enjoyed. My family tried to reach out to me a few times, begging for forgiveness and money, but I didn't give in. I had finally learned my lesson. I had to take care of myself first and foremost, because no one else was going to do it for me. It was a painful and difficult journey, but in the end, it was worth it. I finally found the peace and happiness I had been searching for my entire life, and I realized that I didn't need my family's approval or appreciation to be happy. I just needed to value myself. Life after cutting off my family wasn't easy. The first few months were especially tough. I had to learn how to live for myself and not for others. It was strange not having to worry about sending money back home or answering frantic phone calls in the middle of the night. I started seeing a therapist to help me work through the guilt and the years of emotional manipulation I had endured. Therapy was a game changer. It helped me see things from a different perspective and understand that I wasn't responsible for my family's happiness or well-being. My job at the construction company was going well too. I got promoted to a supervisory position, which came with a significant pay raise and more reasonable hours. I was finally able to save money for myself and even started planning for the future. I dreamed of traveling, seeing new places, and experiencing new things. For the first time in my life, I felt hopeful and excited about what lay ahead. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my mom. She apologized for everything, for the way they had treated me, and for taking advantage of me. She said they missed me and wanted to make amends. She begged me to come back and be part of the family again. As I read the letter, a flood of emotions washed over me. Part of me wanted to forgive them and give them another chance, but another part of me knew that nothing had really changed. They were still the same people who had used and betrayed me. I never heard from my family again after that letter. I don't know what became of them, and I don't really care. I have no room in my life for people who don't appreciate and respect me. I have built a new family with my partner and our friends, and they are the ones who truly matter to me now. The journey to get here was long and painful, but it was worth it. I am stronger, happier, and more fulfilled than I ever thought possible. And I have learned to value and love myself, which is the greatest gift of all.